Panel Show, episode 27, targeting audiences using SEO. Thanks very much for all my panel coming in today. Let's have a quick look at them. We've got Filipa, Billie, and Eilish and Jonas. We'll get to see them all in a second and find out more about them. But what I'd like to do is, before I start, just bring in David, my producer, very, very quickly. And David, if people want to see this show live next time, where do they go? What do they do?
Sure. The address is theknowledgepanelshow.com. That'll redirect you to a page on the InLinks websites. That's where you sign up. We normally broadcast mid-month Wednesdays, 4 p.m. UK time, 11 a.m. East Coast time in the States. If you can join us live, then you can interact, you can ask questions. We cover a different subject every month. And of course, we'll even sometimes intimate what we're going to be talking about beforehand as well, so you can get prepared with the subject matter and see who's going to be coming up as guests. So the address for that, if you want to sign up to watch us live next time, theknowledgepanelshow.com.
Excellent. Thanks a lot, David. And thanks also to InLinks who have sponsored this event. And no doubt somewhere along the line, I'll just say something about InLinks in the middle of the show for no apparent reason, because that's what you do on podcasts. So let's introduce the guests today. We've got a fantastic group of lineup. I'm going to start with Billie. Hello. Welcome back, Billie. How are you?
Hi, I'm good. How are you?
I'm very well. So tell us about yourself. Who are you and where do you come from?
I'm Billie Geena. I'm the Learning and Development Manager at Salt Agency. And this is literally what I've been focusing on for the last few months is target audiences, user intent, segmentation. So I'm buzzing to be on the panel. Thank you.
Brilliant. And thanks very much for letting me come up to the Salt Agency a couple of months back as well. So thanks for your hospitality up there. So it's good. Eilish, how about you? Where are you and where do you come from?
Hey, so I'm Eilish. I'm an SEO account director. I'm currently in Somerset, which is quite nice. So I'm at Mindshare at the moment, and I've got a particular interest in SaaS startups. And again, really interested to be on this podcast because that's kind of what we do when it's a new brand or a new company and they don't really know how to address people. That's where SEO can come in with some great wins.
I love that because now you're going to tell us exactly how InLinks has completely mismatched its marketplace, but we'll save that for after the podcast, possibly, unless you want to bring it in anyway. Filipa, how about you? How are you? Where are you? And where do you come from?
Hello, I'm good. Thank you. Thanks for having me. I'm Filipa. I'm in Madrid right now, in Spain. I'm originally from Portugal and I'm an SEO executive and consultant. I work mainly in the e-commerce. So basically that's my jam. Thanks for having me once again.
Oh, you're very welcome. You're very welcome. And last but not least, Jonas, Sickler, tell us about yourself. Where are you? What are you doing? Where do you come from?
I am in central New York, so outside of the city. I'm an SEO manager at Terrakeet, and it's kind of an interesting meta type of a role because I'm on the marketing team, so I'm doing SEO for our own website, not for customers. So it's kind of doing SEO for an SEO type company is very interesting. And I just love the whole aspect of customer journeys and understanding who the personas are and how SEO fits into that role.
In-house SEO for an SEO company, that's a you're going to get a lot of critics on you. Everyone's a critic in your world. So, guys, thank you very much for coming on. I want to start, the subject of the day, targeting audiences using SEO. So that can be read in a couple of different ways, but I'm going to do what I usually do and ask you for one takeaway or tip for anybody that hasn't got time to listen to the whole show, and you want to just give them a tip right at the top of the show. What is your tip for creating, a target audience using SEO? And I'll go in reverse order then. How about that, you Jonas? Why don't you set off with your one tip?
Sure. I would say that I see SEO as more of a tool to identify what your audience wants and less of a tool to tell you who they are. So I would say start off with persona research and journey mapping to really understand who your audience is, and then use SEO as a tool to unravel the customer journey and figure out what the questions are that they're asking as they move through the funnel, rather than trying to use it to figure out who your audience is in the first place.
Okay, that's good. We might come back to that because that's interesting way of looking at things. Filipa, how about you? What's your tip?
Yes, I mean, my tip on this one would definitely be to really understand who the target audience is, not only what you are, trying for them to look for, so your product, if it's an e-commerce, for example, or your content, but also try to find out what are their needs, what are their concerns, more than what you actually have to offer them. So definitely try to understand very well the whole industry. I guess that's really the most important, like who they are, what do they need, and what are their concerns, like in general. Like really try to dig deep and have the whole picture, let's say.
Okay, so there's a similar sort of thing there to Jonas in that it's sort of, I've got
Yes.
a particular word coming up in my mind, which I'm going to come back to in a second. Eilish, why didn't you go next?
My tip is always try to get data from different places. So thinking about that funnel and the questions and what people are asking, talk to your product team, talk to your inbound leads team, talk to your sales team, because especially if it's like a new brand or a new solution, Google's probably not going to tell us any search volume, because why would Google care about a brand new thing? So get the things that real people are asking about the product and use that to start thinking about the types of content you should be creating.
That is a different cool tip. I like that one. Okay, and Billie, what about for you? What are you? And you're in the middle of doing it all now, so you probably got things that have been in your mind anyway.
So Eilish, you've literally just said the point that I was going to make. So to build on from that, on a complete different subject, is once you've got that data and you know what users are searching and curious about for the business, you also need to think, who aren't my customers? Who don't I want to see this? Why don't I want them to see this? And so you can kind of focus specifically on the correct audience and not the wrong person in that niche, if that makes sense.
Okay, yeah, it does. So, so the two of you, I think the two of you have sort of come with the four of you have come with two different kind of things that I heard. And one of those was the motivation of the user. And another one was, multiple data sources and trying to find out, what doesn't make them tick, what does make them tick, and try and find different sources out there. So let's talk about the motivation. Just when you're talking about motivation, Filipa and Jonas, I know you didn't specifically use that word, but that's kind of the word that stuck in my head there. Are we talking about user intent rather than who they are? Are you saying that what that person is trying to do is much more important than whether they're a CEO or whether they're an SEO or whether they're a male, female, of age group, this, that, and the other, and a whole load of other demographics? Is that the sort of thing you're saying? And if so, what sort of things are you going to use to try and work out what it is that person is wanting or doing, or what their intent is? I don't know who wants to go with that first, whether it's Filipa or Jonas or one of the two that didn't speak on that one. Who's going to go? Jonas looks like he's ready.
Sure. I would say that starting with the persona, the intent is absolutely spot on. I mean, that's exactly what we're trying to do. But starting off with the persona gives you the idea of who is this person, where do they fit into your target audience, and then the keywords really reveal the intent that they have as they move throughout their journey. So they'll obviously, that's going to shift in the awareness phase. They're going to have completely different questions. They're probably not even going to maybe be able to define what it is that they're trying to do at that point. So it's important to get in front of them at each of those stages. And the intent really is kind of about revealing the way that they frame up their questions and specifically what they're looking for, and make sure that you have the content that serves them throughout their entire journey. But the persona, I do think, is a key piece of that, because you can have a group of people with the same problem, but some of those might not fit into how you serve. If there's some folks outside of a country that you don't serve, or some that are at a different price point, you can't service them even though they have the same problem and the same intent. So I think the persona is a key piece of that.
Okay, that's interesting. Filipa or anyone else, anything to add to that?
Yes, I mean, I completely agree with Jonas on this one. It is very important to understand what is the search intent of a user, but then again, we need to know also what's behind, what's the motivation, and like what Jonas says, basically that, you know, several users might have the same intent, but then the type of user that he or she is really varies on what they actually will do, the action, and what they're looking for, basically, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and I guess it plays to Billie's point that you've also got to think about what people don't want. Is that right, Billie?
Yeah, absolutely. For me, one of the first things I like to do with a new client, if they have one, is to speak to their customer service team and their complaints team, and also their sales team, just like Eilish said with her point, and find out when they are making a sale, who is it in the business? Is it an accounts team they're speaking to? Is it the director? Is it CEO? Is it a marketing manager? Who actually is making those sales? Because most businesses don't actually realize who they're selling to, but the customer facing team know exactly, and they can give you that information, and then you can start tailoring your content to an accounts team, to a marketing manager, whatever. And it goes way before the keyword research in my mind. It's in that persona building. It's almost like psychologically putting yourself into these different users, and I don't even know the words I'm trying to say here, but like going down their path and work, like reverse engineering a sale.
So you're reverse engineering their customer journey, effectively, I guess. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Absolutely. So Eilish, you talked about multiple data sources for trying to get these sorts of points. What data sources do you find most useful?
Humans, definitely. So like Billie was saying, like customer service teams, any of the product team I find really good. So actually going beyond the marketing teams as well, and actually going and saying, what elements of products are you actually going to build, what can you offer, where is the market going. I think that's really important. I think something that I've been trying to think of a word to say, but it's almost like pre-qualifying people with the content, because you don't want to be creating content that's going to be pushing people through the sales funnel to get to the end, and actually they don't have the budget, or the product isn't quite right for them because they're outside of their like geography or their age range. So I think that's really important, to be working not just with the product, the marketing teams, but with engineering teams as well.
I agree. I do think that that's a really useful takeaway from a lot of you, really. That idea that you're not all things to all people, even if you are selling a blue or a purple cow, as Seth Godin used to call it. Even if you are selling a purple cow, you're not selling that purple cow to everybody that wants purple cow. There's some people need a boy cow instead of a girl cow, and some people need one with 3 legs, and some people need one that's half the price or half the size or something like that. So I think it's interesting to think about that, and it's almost more interesting it's probably easy to understand your big group of customers, the pond. It's probably easier to define the pond of all the people that could be your customers. It's much harder to then slice out the ones that aren't your customers out of that pond. But in doing so, I guess you make your website, your SEO much more effective, because you're talking to a much narrower audience, and you're going a lot deeper to that audience. And price is clearly an indicator. If you're selling something at $2,000 a month, you don't really want those people to even bother contacting you if they're only going to spend $50 a month. So there's a massive disconnect there that you've got to use. So I like that. What about using Google Suggest as a way of helping to understand that user intent? Because one of the things that Inlinks does is, in its keyword research tools, and it's got new stuff coming out next month. So here's the plug for Inlinks for everyone on the podcast. It's taking topics and ideas that people have that you're already talking about on your website, and then it throws those back into Google Suggest to try and hone those topics into kind of conversations that people are actually having with your website. So how do you think that Google Suggest is a useful tool for trying to understand your customers, or do you think that's a bit extraneous and not the start of the journey? I don't know if anyone want to take that one.
I think it can be. It depends on what type of product you have. So if it is more B2C, if it's more retail, definitely, because there's going to be a lot of high volume searches around that. And I think that's also a good way you can then tailor that into brand questions as well. If someone's midway down the funnel, they'll be asking questions about, the purple cow and how big is it, how easy is it to clean, and then when they go further down the funnel, they start considering your brand versus someone else, they'll start putting the comparisons in instead of the product. So I think that's really good for that kind of thing, and I think that's where that use is. It can be a little bit trickier than when it is more niche or like the more dry topics. Like that's why I like doing the kind of like dry financy stuff, because you need to dig a little bit deeper. So I think when the external tools or Google Suggest runs out, then that's when you can start using Google Search Console, because that's your own private bank of keywords and questions that are coming to you, and they're often quite surprising as well. So I think, Google and the external tools are fantastic for the higher volume stuff, but when it's a little bit more niche, you need to dig a bit deeper.
Yeah. Anyone else got any thoughts about that and Google Suggest in general?
Well, I would say there's also an element of trending to the way Google Suggest works. So it tends to pick up on things that are becoming important, breaking out, or have been searched more recently. So that's great for spotting things that people are searching for in the moment, but it also changes a lot. So it's not like regular keyword volume that you could use. I love the idea, though, Eilish, of using Search Console. That's really important. It's a great way to spot things if you are ranking poorly for some really important keywords, because you only have one piece of content that ranks for a lot of things, but you can identify that those are really important topics that you should break out into a new piece of content and more intentionally target that. And again, that's data that comes from your website, the way that you're performing in search versus something that is universally available. So sometimes you can find those sort of what we've been hearing a lot of zero volume terms, right? That pop up, that are unique to you, that maybe are not on the radar of anyone else.
Oh, you're gonna. I don't normally talk about inlinks quite so much, but someone's going to love the next iteration of inlinks when it comes out. Hopefully next week. If it's not out by the time this podcast comes out, we're going to be able to say that you've only got one piece of content or zero pieces of content on this topic, and you've got loads of other opportunities here, and so far it's going to be good. Anyway, that's not by the by, because it's not live as I speak. Filipa, are you using Search Console? Filipa or Billie, are you using Google Search Console or Google Suggest at all, or is those not part of your mix?
Yes, I usually use them both, of course. Basically, on Google Search Console, exactly, you can find the terms that people are already, finding your website for, and then Google Suggest, depending on what the topics are, can be a good tool. I also like to sometimes answer the public, which does more or less, well, it doesn't, but I also
sort of
like
thing,
to,
and also
yes.
ask is
Yes.
mining. People also ask data, which is slightly different to Google Suggest data, but so both of those, all of those kind of work. So yeah, I think these are all. All of those tools, also asked or answer the public and Google Suggest, they're kind of going one step earlier in the funnel for people. They're trying to get into the head of the user. And one of the things about when you look at your own website stats, you're looking at, somebody that's already come to your website in many ways, and a lot of that data. So I guess that some of those preemptive things are really useful. What about you, Billie? Are you using those tools, or are you using any other especially?
Absolutely. I think those tools are a massive addition that every single SEO has a part of their key toolkit. Recently, I've actually been using Reddit, and the name of the website's gone from my head completely. The one where you ask questions and someone will give you an answer.
Quora. You're thinking of Quora. Yeah.
Yes, that just went completely. And when working with more niche subjects, I've been going on there and searching and seeing if anyone's been talking about niche subjects, anything related, what's trending, and using that as a big basis for then finding out what our target audience is searching, but it doesn't have any search volume or anything going on currently in search. And I found that infinitely just brilliant, basically.
What about Google AdWords or because Ad Planner, the stuff in Google, the PPC side, the dark side of the search industry, as I like to call them, they have some pretty good planning tools in AdWords. So I've been told, not that they let me in there very often, but do you use that data at all and then transfer that over to SEO, or do you have are you a bit like me and you kind of, well, the paid people are the paid people and I'm the organic people? Is anyone actively using, Google AdWords as a methodology for building audiences at all?
Ish. So ish. So one of my best friends is a PPC account director. So love across the divide. And I think working with her has always been brilliant because she's very talented at what she does, and she's been able to teach me more about how to use paid effectively. Before I was friends with her, it was very much a case of search volumes, and that's what you'd get rather than historical trending data. But I do think that, like a lot of tools, you get more out of it once you've been able to test. So actually getting the PPC data and understanding what copy works for them, where that's coming, and like what their landing pages look like, seeing if their channel can help boost organic. So I think it is useful, but I think it's at its most useful as part of like a bigger conversation and a longer term project.
Yeah. Okay. Anyone else using the PPC stuff?
Yes, I use it as well. Sometimes I also like to sometimes work with a paid media team and kind of complement each other's strategy. So like, SEO covers the gaps of SEM and vice versa. And I mean, sometimes I also believe that if you are about to start a new website out of zero, a niche mainly, I do think that sometimes also Google AdWords and bidding on certain keywords can be also a way to somehow validate if it works or not on a short term. And then, if it actually works, you can actually develop an SEO strategy that will work, long term. So yeah, I think they can be a very good complement to each other. I actually like to.
So you're suggesting using a small PPC campaign to decide whether it's worth investing in a proper content strategy for a long-term SEO campaign?
Not always. I'm saying if it's some kind of a niche, something new that it's kind of new in the market, I think that it can be a good strategy. Not always, but I believe it can work sometimes. I mean, it's not always. It depends on a lot of things, obviously, but I do believe it can be a good way in some specific cases. Not always. Yes.
Fair enough.
I would kind of take the slight contrary on the positions. Is just in that I don't really use PPC at all, mostly because I'm afraid that it tends to be very conversion focused, and that it does tend to ignore some of the lower conversion types of keywords at the top of the funnel. So I don't like to get distracted by using something that might weight me towards the bottom of the funnel and cause me to miss some of the keywords that the AdWords type planning doesn't have, because they aren't conversion focused, but are absolutely critical in influencing the customer journey, because all of those touch points are cumulative and they add up. And so the things that you might be absolutely shocked as a first touch point, you might see those converting further down the line after someone has encountered 3, 4, 5 pieces of content. And so I think there is a risk at going after those really juicy, easy to convert keywords at the bottom of the funnel. And there are so many of them that we tend to end up with a bottom heavy funnel if we focus too much on those. So it's really important to make sure that we cover the whole journey, including the things that the PPC tools don't reveal.
I suppose over the years, the PPC tool set has it's been a long time since I've used PPC, so I might be talking rubbish here, but I did feel that they were trying to go broader and broader and trying to get the user to get the PPC manager to start, going into broader markets, I guess, to try and get the clicks up, the impressions up for ad inventory, and that has the opposite of effect of knowing where of being able to pinpoint where somebody is in in a value chain, I suppose, or in a flow workflow. So, yeah, interesting. Two sides of an argument. I mean, Eilish, sorry.
I say, just come back to that. I think that broadly PPC can be quite like bottom funnel conversion focused, but again, depending on the sector or vertical that you're in, I've seen some really successful PPC campaigns that have been able to support the more mid funnel points when it's more like white paper publication, more like the broad top level thing, or often with like some medical sites that we've worked on as well. There's the people tend to be in the top and mid of that conversion funnel for so long. Anything that is either your money or life or just like expensive stuff to do with finance. So I think sometimes their PPC can be less focused on the more aggressive conversions and can bring more people into the more like long tail consideration content.
Yeah, I think that's good, and I use PPC as well. We've been recently using PPC as well to try and hone the message to a particular segment. So we've got people that want to design content, people that want to do internal linking, people want to do keyword research. We've got different sections within there, but we don't necessarily know what kind of message is going to resonate. So using A/B testing in PPC with different, aiming at the same segment, but then trying to do different messaging there, quickly helps us to understand more about which segment is going to resonate with which message a little bit. So I think there is some pretty good use for that. But you can also use Google Analytics, of course, to segment the existing audiences. I mean, Jonas mentioned, looking at, and Eilish mentioned looking at Search Console data, and so you're looking at you've got a huge ability to segment your existing customer base by geographical location. Sadly, not by keyword in Google Analytics, but when do you use segmentation to try and understand things, and if so, how do you segment your audience at all, really? If you're trying to segment audiences, for the benefit of SEO, what sort of segmentation do you do? High in the funnel versus low in the funnel? Whether they're talking from India or America, what sort of things do you use to segment your audience? Who's going to jump in on that one? Billie, I'll pick on you.
Thank you for picking on me. I've not thought of an answer yet.
All right, that's okay. I can pull on someone else there. Anyone else want to jump in? How do you what segmentation styles do you think works? There's Jonas waving his hand. So I'll go there.
All right. We tend to. It really depends on your personas and your audience, but I tend to like to combine Google Analytics data because in our case, geographic is really important. We only serve within the United States, so I have to know not just which pages are converting, but which ones are converting within the U.S. And then the other side of that coin is
are you in industry which is important by city in the U.S. as well? So is it apart from New York being important?
Exactly. So if you have, if you know that there are certain hub cities where most of your customers originate from, obviously then geography is incredibly important. I also like to look at the size of the company, and that data is not really available in analytics because our customer base is a particular size, a very large Fortune 1000 companies. So that data is not in GA. So I need to combine it with data from like Leadfeeder and other types of tools that will identify whether a large brand is on your website, and then take that data and combine it with what's in GA for traffic and conversions so that I can say, well, which URLs are actually attracting not just a lot of sessions, but the right sessions from the right companies, and which ones are converting. And then when they convert, are they our target audience? So I have to kind of piece together those different pieces of information in order to segment by a few different demographics. And some of those tools it's hard to combine the data. So we have to go into Google Sheets and do it that way. But I do think making those decisions based on your particular audience is critical, no matter where you get the data from, so that you're not just looking at conversions and traffic, but also are they the right ones?
Eilish, do you want to jump in?
Yeah, and so I was going to say, it kind of comes back to the point that Billie was making earlier about making sure you're pre-qualifying people and not getting the wrong people too far down the funnel. And I think when it comes to segmentation as well, I think it's good to think along the funnel, and then also cutting it down even further in the people within that funnel, because there are the people who are helping other people make decisions. So if, for example, it is like a care home brand, there are going to be the grandchildren, there's going to be the parents, there's going to be doctors, there's going to be clinical partners. There's lots of different people within those segments who are going to be either talking to each other or talking to the people above them or below them. And that's, I think, an important thing to think about, like not just always thinking that it's like a linear conversion. It's people at the top will talk and people within all of them talk. So it's good to have, I guess, content that speaks to lots of different people who are speaking about the same thing.
That is interesting. You've got different stakeholders in a problem. The care home problem is quite an interesting one, I suppose, because of course the person that's going into the care home wants to make sure that they're going to get good care and they're going to be looked after. The kids may be worried about the price. People that are looking for a job at the care home may be interested in the reputation of the care home. All sorts of different. There's going to be different stakeholders in different stages, and you want a different kind of message to those kind of people sometimes. Filipa or Billie, anything to add on there, or shall I jump on? Yeah, okay. So the last thing that I really wanted to start talking about was proper. Well, okay, I'm going to say proper with inverted commas here. Traditional keyword research tools. So there's a number of tools out there that give you, this number of people typed in this keyword last month. SEMrush, Ahrefs, SimilarWeb. There used to be others as well, and you probably may have other ones. Ubersuggest, I think. So there's a bunch of in there. Those kind of traditional SEO keyword research tools. How important are they for segmentation? B, do you find them accurate at all? C, has the world moved on from there? They're a big part of the SEO world. So how valuable? Which ones are valuable? Billie's got a hand bursting to go, so I'll jump in there. Go on. What have you found useful?
Yes. So I love these traditional tools, but I don't think I use them for search volume very often. I do. Obviously, you do keyword research, do a bit of keyword mapping at the start of any campaign. But the way I love to use tools, so in particular, I use Ahrefs.
Mm-hmm.
And what I like to do is use it to kind of qualify user intent. So I focus a lot on things that are very niche. So it tends to be 0 search volume, very low search volume. So I know that they've not got a search volume. I've seen that. I've looked at that. I've Googled them. There's definitely pages connected to them. So what I can do is search these terms that don't have this massive search volume, or at least it says it doesn't because it's just using a pre-given data set. But then if you look at that page and look at the traffic and do the inspection that is available on Ahrefs, you can actually see that page gets loads of traffic. So then you can go back and look at the traffic for that keyword or the estimated traffic. And actually, it doesn't have a search volume, but there's traffic happening. There's definitely markers that this is actually something you should focus on. And I just think traditional tools these days, you can't focus on the search volume because search is evolving. There's so many keywords out there that, and I can't remember the exact stats, but I think it's something like, I'm not going to give any data, but X% of searches per day are brand new to Google.
Yeah.
But there's still people searching for them. So why would you trust?
Yeah, I can't remember what the stats were, but it's on like half of, but they'll change over time, of course, as well. A large number of searches are unique to, or used to be certainly unique to any given day, month, or ever, in fact. Yeah. What about the rest of you? What tools are you using if you're using those keyword research tools, and what do you like? Jonas?
Well, one of the things that I think is really interesting to remember is that in terms of search volume, it's really a lagging indicator. It's a 12-month lagging indicator of what was popular over the last 12 months divided by 12 months, and so it gives you the monthly volume on that. I do tend to look at SEMrush as far as keyword research goes, but I tend to use keyword research tools as a jumping point to understand the breadth of questions that people have as they move through the journey. And then I always look to Google SERP after that to find the intent. I don't rely on what tools tell me the intent for a keyword is, or even whether they indicate, I know Ahrefs does have a handy parent keyword category where it says, if you rank for this, then here's the parent keyword you need to publish on. But I prefer to look at the SERP and see, number one, is it consistent? And does that mean like everything on page one is an informational, definitional, what is X type of a keyword, or is it a mix of things? Because Google says there is no one specific answer to this question. There is a spectrum of answers. So how many different people are answering it in how many different ways? And then the third question is it possible to create one piece of content for this, or do I need to create multiple pieces of content without cannibalizing rankings for any of them? Is it really three different distinct answers, or is it one answer? So I kind of think I start off in those search tools, but I always look to Google because that's really the true answer of what Google has more data than anybody has in terms of keywords and what users are looking for.
Right. Okay. Eilish and Filipa, are there any other tools that you use apart from Ahrefs and SEMrush for keyword?
Yes.
Yeah, go on.
I also use Systrix quite a lot.
Yeah.
And yeah,
that's
it's
good in Spanish, I would imagine, as well. So.
Yes, and it's true that sometimes different data come out of different tools. So sometimes you can get a bit confused by so many different insights. So yeah, definitely, I do agree that we need to go a little bit further and do the research also ourselves. Look at the SERP, look what the intent is, and really find out, more than what the tools actually tell us. So yeah, I agree with what Billie and Jonas said on this one. And yeah, that's it.
Eilish, any other tools to add into the mix?
I've recently started playing around with Stat and Authoritas. They're quite good for enterprise size accounts. So they're good for like grouping huge data sets, but I have to agree with Jonas on like the Google it thing. So I think that the keyword tools, the traditional ones, are really good for like the execs and the juniors and people who are learning. So you can say, here's loads of keywords, learn what search intent is. So actually go through, here's a list of 500 keywords, do some formulas, do some categorization, and start grouping them. And you teach them how to do that by saying, if you're confused about what the search intent of this keyword is, Google it. And I think that is the best. Like they are really good for getting huge amounts of data. They're really good for defining like the keyword universe, going to a client and saying, this is a huge opportunity. But when it comes to how we're translating that into actionable pieces of work, you do need to have that human element in there.
So I think that that's really useful stuff. I think the human element is very important. But I think as well, another thing about Google, having to go back to Google, is that the traditional keyword tools don't use verbs is basically what they don't use. So they're sitting there giving you keyword volume for house, not necessarily noting that home is a similar synonym for house. So house insurance and home insurance, if you type one in, you're going to get the results for the other one sort of sitting up there in the answer. So they're synonyms, and most of those tools are not getting the synonyms totally. I don't know, they do a little bit, but not brilliantly, and they're not building it around topics. But more importantly, house, home, buying a home, renting a home, selling a home, and insuring a home, and decorating a home are 5 very, very different activities, hugely different activities. If you're going to decorate a home, you certainly don't want to, you're not trying to buy it, you've already got it. So I think that these verbs are something that the keyword research tools miss mostly in working out that user intent. And Google suggests does. So basically, Google, going back to Google, the user intent is much more obvious because those underlying, meanings become more obvious when you start using verbs. And I wonder if we've kind of missed verbs in user intent as a way of SEOs, understanding the user journey and segmenting their audiences better. I don't know if anyone's any comments on that or disagreements with that.
I think that's a bit of so if you think about Google and like the core of how search engines work, it focuses and is run on an inverted index. So when you make you search for anything, it breaks it down into them core elements and removes those verbs because they're typically stop words. So that's what it's focusing on. And so I feel like anyone that uses, especially when they start out, the juniors and execs, when they first start out in SEO, they're obsessed with those big search volumes, those big numbers. That's what they want to focus on. And whilst you can find that data in Google search and looking into things that bit further, Google still doesn't always get it right. So if for broad terms where like home or house, where it could be you're looking to buy one, you're looking to insure one, you're looking to decorate one, if your search is vague, Google will have to just come up with a vague mishmash of information, even if if there are verbs there in the search, because typically those would be actually removed. And you can, so it would present data potentially that would meet all three of those needs, unless it's primarily focused. Although it does have that I can never say that. I am going to say cinnamon. Those cinnamon.
You said it perfectly, Billie.
It has that extra bit of understanding. However, there's other understanding what it doesn't get, because it's built to ignore those to be able to get you that result in 0.22 seconds. So,
but if a word becomes a stop word, then a user are they not going to refine that search until it becomes the right answer for them? Don't they change their behavior if they've put in the wrong or something too simple?
Yes, so it is a case of almost conditioning users to search more long tail, to be more specific, because the longer their search term is, the more information they're giving Google to throw through that inverted index and get the result that's actually specific to what they're searching. And still, even though Google's getting smarter and more complex, there is still plenty of times where I've Googled something and I've not got what I've looked for, so I've gone in, and it's took me like 3 or 4 Googles. Literally, I was trying to find something on ASOS and I couldn't be bothered with going through loads and loads of category pages. So I was coming up with all the things that I could remember about this thing I wanted to buy, and it ended up being like 7 words long. You get more specific because you have to be to get the result that you want. Yeah.
Anyone else got any? Jonas?
I think that's an excellent point. There's definitely, I completely agree with everything you just said.
With Billie or Dixon?
Billie.
With Billie, there you go. Eilish, Filipa, I mean, have you really sort of delved into verbs in user intent at all, or do you think it's important to consider verbs more than we do in keyword research and in segmenting customers into helping understand what it is that the user is actually trying to do? No.
Do you want to go first?
Actually,
No?
I was going to say there's also what I find most fascinating about the way that Google has been moving and evolving is really that on the ideas of synonyms, I also struggle with that word, is that Google's trying to understand more around the edges of the keywords. Where are those similarities, but not only which words are synonyms for each other, but what are the nuanced differences between them? One example would be, types of content marketing versus examples of content marketing. Sounds like the same thing, but there's a little difference. One is sort of how are brands using it? What are some examples of what has been done? And then types is more, what are the different ways you can do this? Others might be like, what's the importance versus the pros and cons? There's some very similar aspects to that, but Google is trying to understand what are really the nuanced differences between these words, not just the synonyms. So I think that there's a lot of really interesting things that we can, as content creators, if we can understand what Google's trying to achieve. And sometimes we know that our audiences don't really know how to search, that they throw something out there and they land on your page and they realize, oh, I didn't really search what I wanted to. So if you've created that secondary piece of content that supports it, then they'll just go and click on that and then read through, rather than returning back to Google and refining their search. So I guess that's an argument for creating those topic clusters of related content, so that you can understand, if someone searched this, they might have meant this other thing. So let me make sure that I have that ready for them and offer it up to them just in case they need it.
Eilish?
Yeah, and this has just all made me think that, Billie, when you were talking about ASOS and how annoyed you were that you couldn't Google and get on the right page for it, and Jonas, when you're talking about people not Googling quite the right thing, I think this is making me think, and like when you've been talking about the verbs, Dixon, like, well, I'd never use a verb in search because, and of course I wouldn't, because I spend my entire day thinking about how Google works and how robots work and how it should all work ideally. And then it makes me think back to when I think back, like I've not seen another human for days, but when I see people Googling, my friend's just Googling a restaurant, and I'm like, you're using Google wrong. Stop using it like this, type it like this. And I think maybe we could all do stepping back a little bit and forgetting that people do search in funny ways, and Google's probably still learning that, and that sometimes we need to think about how normal people use Google and not
So you're
just
saying that SEOs
like
don't search like real people.
Yeah.
That's an
Yeah,
interesting
basically.
observation. And knowing how bias works, it's entirely likely that we completely misunderstood what actual users are typing in a lot of the time.
Yeah.
Filipa, any other thoughts to add there?
No, actually, you made me think about all the things you've said, and I agree with Eilish on this one, because I do find myself sometimes Googling things on a, I think, different way, on a really weird way, because of the job that I do. So I think that's definitely a thing. Very interesting.
Yeah, I don't think most people would know how to use asos.com to try and tie their results down to ASOS results. So brilliant. Okay, well, guys, we're at time already, and these things do tend to move quite quickly. But in case anyone's had something that one of you has said that they want to reach out, how do they get in contact with you? Can they reach out on Twitter or LinkedIn or on a website somewhere? Eilish, how do they get hold of you?
You can find me on LinkedIn. So it's my name and Hughes. It's much easier to spell. Or on Twitter.
So hold on, guys. So for all those people on podcasts, this happens every single time I ask this question. Eilish is spelled E-I-L-I-S-H. Like
Billie Eilish.
And has Hughes got an E?
Hughes has got an E. It's Hughes. Or if you want to find me on Twitter, that's Dorky. So like, I'm Dorky, and then just Eilish again.
Dorky Eilish, excellent. Billie, how do they find you?
So you can find me anywhere online as Billie Geena. That's Billie with an I-E, and Geena is spelled G-E-E-N-A. I have been called Geena a few times. That is okay, but if it helps you spell it.
Brilliant. Filipa, how do they get hold of you? And just for anyone on podcast, Filipa is spelled with an F and one L and one B.
Not PH. Yeah. So basically, on LinkedIn, Filipa, Serra, Gaspar.
Okay. All right. I'll just do the whole lot then. Serra is Serra and Gaspar is Gaspar. Yeah.
Or on Twitter, which would be a Filipa Gaspar. So actually, it's
Brilliant.
Gaspar. I'm just saying it.
It's pronounced with an H in there just to confuse English people, English-speaking people, even more.
Serra, Gaspar.
This is why we got to do the spellings on podcasts. Jonas, how do they get hold of you?
I am on Twitter and LinkedIn, and it's under my name, Jonas, Jonas, Sickler, Sickler. So you'll find me in either place searching that.
Brilliant. Guys, thank you very much for coming in. Now, just before we go, I'm going to ask David to come back in and tell us about the next episode of the Knowledge Panel Show.
Sure. Next month's episode will be on Monday the 17th of October, 4 p.m. BST, the last BST episode until we go back to GMT. That is, of course, 11 a.m. Eastern Time. Particular topic for that show is how digital PR intersects with SEO. We're going to have a few guests for that one there, so we're going to confirm them over the next couple of weeks. Indeed, if you're listening and you would like to be a future guest on the Knowledge Panel Show, the best way of being so is if you sign up at theknowledgepanelshow.com. Come along, watch a live one next, interact in the chat, and let us know that you want to be part of a future one, and perhaps you can join us as a future guest as well.
Brilliant. Okay, guys. Well, thank you ever so much for the interesting chat, some interesting thoughts as well, and I hope the audience gets something out of it as well. I'll just, for me to say thanks a lot and goodbye. Goodbye, everyone.